Outlaw Law is brought to you by Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors at law. Your law firm for life.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. They're your hosts. They're also the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm, practicing attorneys here in North Carolina. And Whitaker and Hamer, they're everywhere. Well, offices located in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate and sometimes referee between Josh and Joe. We have listener questions going on today, and it's all about business. So, Josh, take it away.
Yeah, we started out, our first listener question was on taxation. You know, when you're starting a business, you get to make certain elections, you get to make certain choices about how you get taxed. And so that was our first listener question. And our next listener question is going to be a little different topic. Right, Joe?
Yeah, way better than that one. Nah, I'm just kidding. Yours was great. We've already gotten 17 emails from fans from the future saying how good it was. So this isn't really so much of a question as it is a question, but we're going to have to present it as a fact pattern, right? So we've got a client who is a seller, and they wouldn't be our client in this case because, of course, we represent the buyer, but we've got a seller in a transaction.
What kind of transaction?
This is a closing or real estate purchase transaction. So this person is selling their home, and they bought their home unmarried. They were not married. They were living a peaceful single life, living their dreams, and they purchase this home. Then they meet someone, they fall in love, and they get married after the fact. So they take title in their sole name. They never put their spouse on title.
They fell in love, and then they got married, right?
Yeah, they fell in love first, and then they dated for 18 months,
and then got married.
And then they got married. But they were very much in love.
Got it.
Very much in love. Anyways, not in love enough to put the spouse, the husband, on title. So husband never goes on title, always owned in the sole name. And then they fall out of love. It's like so many couples tragically do, Josh. They fall out of love. They don't like the same TV shows. The man watches the Netflix show without his wife, and it all falls apart.
Right.
And they hate each other. They start screaming, and they decide that they're going to get separated. Not divorced. Eventually they'll get divorced, but they're going to get separated. So they get separated. However, they don't sign any formal separation agreement. They haven't gotten to that point yet. And they kind of fall out of touch with one another. And this lady who owns this house in her sole name lists her house for sale. Get to the point where closing is upon us, or prior to closing, because this is an issue you discover, when the title search is done. And this lady's very shocked to find out that her husband has a marital interest in this property, even though he was never on title. And that we will have to have him sign something at closing to be recorded to take care of that marital interest.
Yeah,
that's not really a question, but the question would be, if I bought a house while unmarried, then got married, and then got separated, does my spouse have to sign the deed?
And the answer to that question is yes.
It's yes, in the absence of something else.
Yeah, that shocks people a lot of times, especially if they're not from here. It's different in different states. But in North Carolina, when me and Joe start talking about real property law, which we do often, it seems.
It's such a banger of a topic, man.
Everybody's dealing with real property.
Yeah, everybody. We're standing on right. Look at the bottom of your feet. You're standing on real property right now.
As you speak.
It's everywhere.
So in North Carolina, there's two things. You're single or you're married.
That's it.
Separated is not a legal status in North Carolina. Doesn't mean anything.
If you're separated, you're married to us.
Yeah.
For the purposes of a title search, and we talk about the fact that you need something else to keep your estranged spouse in this scenario from having to sign, and that something else is you need something that is going to memorialize the fact that you are what we call a free trader, meaning that you have the ability to separately own property. And it needs to be something that is on record formally. That's the sticking point. Because in this theoretical scenario, we're dealing with a person. This person actually presented a separation agreement to us, and it was they had lost the signature pages, so they didn't have the signature pages. They got the whole agreement. They got a notary page, no signature pages, and so that's worth it. We can't do anything with it because you have to. In this scenario, you've got to be able to put something on record, and that is not something that you can record. So we are in a situation where you're going to have to reach out to somebody that you've had a screaming match with over a Netflix show, apparently. And you're going to have to get that person to come in and sign a deed so you can sell your home and get paid for it. And I can tell you from experience, anytime an estranged spouse who you've probably said goodness knows what to at this point, because you thought you were never going to have to deal with this person again. Anytime they find out you're selling a house and there's money coming and that they've got to sign, that is never a good combination.
No, they're usually not going to do you a solid and sign it, right?
No, it's not their thing to do you a solid and sign it. But
we had one time where someone had been separated for like, it was 20 plus years. Like they had been separated. They didn't even know if that person was alive or dead. And they just didn't know it. Neither one of them had ever gotten divorced. So, in North Carolina right now, the way it is, you got to be separate for a year. But once you are, then any person can file for a divorce. You don't have to, or you got to get people served. You do have to kind of locate people. But she was able to, this person just got divorced. I was like, you could just get divorced. And she's like, oh, I'll get divorced.
Man, I had a girlfriend in 10th grade and I just stopped talking to her. I think we're still dating technically. Right along those same lines. But no, yeah, it happens, man. I've seen it more than once where you have someone, and I've seen it in the situation where you have two people on title, so both parties are on title, and then they separate, they divorce, but they never take care of that. And then one of them vanishes off the face of the earth. They're not dead, they're still alive, but you can't find them. And that's a nightmare, man. It's not a fun scenario to deal with.
I think we understand, there was a time where you just, if you're lucky, right, you married your high school sweetheart, you just started a life. But I think as we get further away from like the 50s and the 60s, and people are getting married later in life when they already have assets. I got married, I didn't know nothing.
Yeah,
I had nothing to protect. There was no reason to get a prenup. I didn't own anything. But a lot of people are getting.
And now you're rich, man. God,
but
you got those yachts.
People have assets now, and getting married. It's the biggest legal decision most people ever make with maybe the least amount of consideration. If you were going to do anything else, if you're going to take on, like me and Joe are law partners, and I thought long and hard, right? Me and Joe thought long and hard about being law partners. It's not something we entered into haphazardly.
It's pretty natural, man.
It worked out.
We had a lot of chemistry.
But you go into business with somebody, you buy a house with somebody, you buy a car with somebody, any guys you would really think it over, buy a PlayStation together, right?
Yeah.
You think you put a lot of thought into it because there's money on the line. And a lot of people maybe get married. I would say get married on a whim.
Man, I hope that you can afford to buy your own PlayStation. if you got to form a conglomerate to buy a PlayStation.
I was trying to think about situations before I got married. So like me and a roommate,
sure.
We went in on a PlayStation.
Yeah. But I understand what your point is. Like, yeah, man, there's people that get married on a whim, but you're signing up for a lot, especially in the state of North Carolina. You're locked in, and that spouse is locked in. And if you come into a lot of things, if you're like you and you come into 18 yachts, 6 mansions. Yeah, it's going to be, your spouse is you're going to have some division to do in the event it goes wrong.
So the marital interest in real property, and again, we're talking about real property. You know where that comes from, Joseph? Have you ever had to look at it?
What, the marital interest?
Yeah, you know where it comes from?
Yeah, I do, but why don't you tell the people? I don't want to do a spoiler.
In North Carolina, your spouse, if you were to pass away and you were married, and your spouse wanted to object to your will, and they didn't like what they were left, they could take a life estate in all your real property.
Yeah.
Right. And so that doesn't.
And again, that's if they're not on title, right? Like that's a situation where they are not already on title and they don't already, have their own interest.
Yeah. And so that marital interest has to be conveyed away. And so when your spouse signs, like if I own something in my name and I want to sell it, my wife is going to join me in that conveyance to our buyer because she has a marital interest. Now, she may not be, my wife would be, but sometimes your spouse may not be entitled to any money. That doesn't mean they're entitled to money necessarily, but they do have that interest they have to release with their signature.
Yeah, you're getting into a little bit more of a complex discussion when you talk about are they entitled to money and the interest of time and efficiency. That marital interest, if you're not on title, you marry into someone who owns property, the value of that interest is basically going to be calculated on how much did that property appreciate from the time that you guys got married. That's how it's usually going to be factored. But so you could be entitled to some money. That's not what we're talking about here.
Maybe she'll have to reach out to this guy to come sign this deed and it'll rekindle their love.
In my theoretical, they get back together. They fall in love.
This is like a movie,
And,
and this is how it all.
Yeah, it's a movie. It's You've Got Mail. It's that one.
I never saw that movie.
I didn't either, but it's the first one that came to my mind. It doesn't sound like one I'm gonna make the time to see.
That's one of those movies, like I think I've said this before on there. I've never seen the Titanic, and I'm confident I will go to my grave never having watched Titanic.
You do
You
know,
think so?
You know how it ends, so what's the point? Right?
Yes, yeah.
Same thing with Avatar. I'm gonna go to my grave having never seen Avatar.
Hey, man, so you just hate James Cameron? You've seen Aliens, haven't you? Have you seen Terminator 2? These are all James Cameron films.
So I never watched Aliens.
Okay.
I have seen Terminator 2.
Aliens is fantastic, man. You should watch that. Make your kids watch it.
Well, it's just never happened for me.
You don't
Maybe
watch
one
a
day
lot
it'll
of films.
happen.
You didn't go to daycare by Video Express. Clearly.
I did not. I had to wait for HBO free cable weekend. To
My
see
dad would take us to movies all the time too, man. I think he just didn't want to have to hear us. So he'd take us to the movies all the time, man. Anyways.
The Outlaw Lawyers, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. They are the managing partners at Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. Again, the power behind this program. They have offices located in Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and Morehead City. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. Today, we're doing listener questions, all in the business realm when it comes to the legalese. We'll talk more about it when we come back.